Rochester Castle in Kent, England, was built by Gundulf, Bishop of Rochester, not the wizard from Lord of the Rings, at the request of William Rufus in the 1080s. Its dominating keep was erected in 1127, commissioned by King Henry I. The castle endured 3 separate sieges, and though it fell into ruin during the 1600s, it remains an important structure in England's history, said to be haunted by a lady in white. As the story goes, Ralph de Capo held the fort during the 1264 siege to protect his fiancée, Lady Blanche de Warenne. He made chase when the enemy retreated. A soldier entered and made advances to Warenne, who refused his embrace. Capo saw the struggle and shot an arrow. Sadly, it didn't hit his intended target and instead struck Warenne, killing her. Some say she still hangs around the castle, seen with an arrow stuck in her chest. Charles Dickens supposedly haunts the castle too. Dickens grew up in nearby Chatham. He refers to the castle in some of his works, and rumors say he longed for the fortress to be his final resting place. Though his wishes were never fulfilled, some say he wanders the castle in spirit. Today's Rochester Castle is not the first castle erected on the site. However, there is much uncertainty regarding the original castle, and its exact location is unknown. It's believed it was built by William the Conqueror, and may have been a Motte and Bailey design, complete with a wooden palisade and outer earthworks. The current castle was built between 1087 and 1089. It boasted a curtain wall surrounding the site, and the castle was rebuilt in stone. During the 1220s, it featured a 2-story chamber block, a circular drum tower, a large bailey, and a gatehouse. Post-Norman conquest. Historians believe that William the Conqueror built a wooden castle with outer earthworks on the site of modern-day Rochester Castle just after the Norman conquest. 1080s. Rochester Castle was commissioned at the crossing of the River Medway, and to rebuild the wooden outer defenses in stone. 1127. King Henry I planned the building of a great castle keep, and commissioned William de Corbeil, Archbishop of Canterbury, to complete the job. The Archbishops of Canterbury maintained control of Rochester Castle throughout much of the 12th century. 1141. During King Stephen's rule, the Earl of Kent was held prisoner at the castle. 1215. Archbishop of Canterbury, Stephen Langton, maintained control of the castle during the First Barons' War. However, baronial forces took over the castle. King John wouldn't stand for the castle being held against him, so he besieged the fortress, causing the destruction of the southwest turret. The siege lasted 7 weeks before the garrison surrendered after running out of provisions. After King John laid siege, the conditions became worse and worse. Their provisions ran out, and the garrison resorted to eating the flesh of their own horses. To save on provisions, some men were forced out of the keep to surrender, and some sources say their hands and feet were amputated by King John's army. King John used pig fat to light a fire under the keep during his siege. This resulted in the collapse of the southeast corner of the keep, forcing those in the castle to move to the northern end. 1264. The Second Barons' War broke out and Rochester Castle was besieged yet again, this time by Earl Simon de Montfort. At first, royal forces were able to force the barons from the castle. However, after their defeat at Lewes, the garrison surrendered. The siege led to extensive damage and the castle fell into disrepair. The burnt-out ruins of buildings in the bailey were demolished in 1281. 1314. Elizabeth de Burgh, Queen of Scots and wife to Robert Bruce, King of Scotland, was held prisoner for 4 months at Rochester Castle. 1367 to 1383. Although towers were built and the curtain wall underwent numerous repairs during this time, the castle was still in disrepair. The keep, gatehouse, hall, kitchen, and stable still stood on the site, though they were in desperate need of renovation. Despite this, the keep remained in use. In 1381, the Peasants' Revolt broke out, which was the last military action at Rochester Castle. In the decade following the revolt, additional repairs were completed. 1423. After Henry V's death, his widow, Catherine de Valois, inherited Rochester Castle. Upon her death 14 years later, the castle passed into the hands of the Clerk of the King's Works. There is much uncertainty regarding what happened at the castle during this time until the late 16th century. 1660s. Historians believe a fire broke out in the castle keep, causing the building to fall further into disrepair. 1870. The 7th Earl of Jersey, Victor Child Villiers, leased Rochester Castle to the Rochester Corporation. The organization opened the bailey to the public. Its ivy-covered stone walls and various plants and trees made it a scenic public park. 1984 to now. Nearly 2 decades after the Ministry of Works assumed ownership of Rochester Castle, responsibility was granted to English Heritage, who continues to manage the site as of today. The fortress was surrounded by a curtain wall and a ditch. The castle stood at a massive 6.7 meters and was wider at the base, measuring 1.4 meters thick at the bottom and 0.61 meters at the top. Embrasures were added during the 13th century. Adjacent to the western curtain wall stood a 2-story chamber projecting out of the wall. This was constructed during the first half of the 13th century by King Henry III. He also commissioned the building of the circular drum tower, which sat in the southeast corner. This tower measured about 9.1 meters in diameter. The eastern wall included 2 towers, each 2 stories, built during the late 14th century. The northern tower was used as a royal accommodation and was more elaborately designed than the other tower. Visitors would cross a raised stone pathway to cross the ditch that once surrounded the castle. From here, they would cross through an arch that sat between the 2 rectangular towers that jutted out from the curtain wall. The gatehouse was rebuilt in the 13th century. Rochester Castle's bailey is still roughly the same size as it was during its heyday. This area once contained vast Victorian gardens and numerous buildings, likely including a hall, stables, workshops, and a well. The massive Norman Keep sits at the southwest end of the bailey. The keep is, by far, the most commanding part of Rochester Castle. The top of the turrets measures an incredible 38 meters in height. Rochester Castle's keep is the tallest surviving keep in England. Like the curtain walls, the walls of the keep are wider at the base and narrow towards the top. The bottom part measures 3.7 meters thick and the top measures 3 meters. A rectangular turret held the entrance to the keep, which opened to a receiving space. The keep boasted numerous windows with molding of various designs. The higher windows were bigger than those below and featured elaborate carvings and arches. Inside the keep was a detailed interior, complete with wooden floors, latrines, and several fireplaces. The basement acted as a storage space, and the 2 ground floors served as living quarters for the castle garrison. The second level included the royal accommodations and gathering space, likely a hall. This level was by far the most elaborate, featuring large columns, molded pilasters, and rounded archways with chevron designs. It's believed this level may have once included a throne or king's table. The ditch that once surrounded Rochester Castle has been filled in. The original gatehouse, turrets, and postern gate were dismantled in the 1870s, and the area was transformed into a garden. Although the keep still looks much as it did in its heyday, it has undergone some alterations throughout its over 900-year history. The original timber roof and floors are no more, but visitors can still see remnants of the elaborate window moldings. The bailey, which once housed numerous buildings, is the site of the castle gardens. If you wish to visit this magnificent location, please visit the link in the description for all the essential information, a 10% ticket discount, parking access, and to discover what there is to do on a day visit. Thank you for watching.